Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to... The murder of Presi, Bavver. The Blauwevmans County Police Station was a horrible place for officers and criminals alike. The station had been built in 1932, and to most everyone's sadness, had been one of the only buildings to hold up during the Second World War. The station was built from old, withering bricks, and the man who was in charge of keeping the ivy along the sides of the building contained was too busy hitting on women to actually get the job done. The inside was even worse. The oak doors were creaky on their rusty hinges, and the musty concrete jail cells were cracking due to the recent heat surge the Netherlands were experiencing. The small cubicles for officers were tight, and the air conditioning rarely worked. To make things worse, the computer system was terrible. Sometimes, officers would sit for hours just to wait for a 12-page document to load. It didn't help that Blauwevmans was a city in the middle of the mountains, away from most metropolitan. Just getting into the next county took 2 hours. The only good thing that had happened to the police station in the past month was that the exterminator had came. The rats were gone, and they wouldn't be back. But from where Evian van Beek was sitting, she swore she saw a rat scurry past the chief of police's office as she and Lucas Hoysk waited to be called in for questioning. Evi tapped her feet on the wooden floors, anxiously looking around. The police station was crowded for a Sunday night. Some officers were packing up to leave for the night. Others cursed as their computers failed to upload their files. It looked like one of the cops, Sergeant Shea, was having a small party. Evi leaned over her seat, watching some of the officers chat and shove forkfuls of red velvet cake into their mouths. Maybe a birthday? Evi slouched back into her chair and sighed. Lucas bit his lip, staring curiously at the ceiling. Evi knew that look. "What denk je wel net?" Evi asked, pushing a dark hair out of her face. Lucas shot Evi an alarmed look. "Evi," he hissed, "talk ahead angles." Evi gave him a puzzled look. They were both studying English as a world language. They were almost fluent. But why practice for the upcoming test when they're in a police station about to get questioned as suspects of a murder? Evi looked around before repeating her question. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas rubbed his strawberry blonde hair. "They can't understand us if we talk in English," he said, his Dutch accent well enunciated. Lucas tilted his head to the side, indicating the officers eating cake behind him. Lucas continued, a worried look on his face. "I know the plan didn't exactly go according to plan." Evi shot Lucas a deadly glare. "Lucas, we killed..." Evi peered over her shoulder, making sure the officers weren't paying any attention to them. She lowered her voice. Presi. We killed Presi, the mayor's son, but they have no proof it is us. All they saw was the security tapes, Lucas stated, exasperated. We were running. So what? That could mean we were running away from the murderer. Evi bit her lip. We did it. We have to confess. If we don't, and they find out it was us, there will be much bigger. Is it consequences? Lucas shook his head. Consequences, you mean? But what if they don't find out it was us? We could lie and be done with this. And what if they do? Evi hissed loudly, tears sparkling in her eyes. She tugged at the neckline of her purple shirt. Either way, I do not want to end up in Gavanjanus. Lucas frowned. I'm afraid neither lying nor telling the truth will get you out of jail. At least we have a shot if we lie, but that is not the right thing to do. We could get a worse sentence if they do find out it was us. Lucas, we killed someone, Evi cried. Small tears began to flow from her blue eyes and stream down her face. Lucas looked over at her helplessly, gritting his teeth. His knuckles were white as they gripped the seat of his chair. They're going to call us in any minute, Lucas said softly. So pick your poison. Evie dried her tears, sighing sadly. She looked up and pointed to the chief's door. Lucas, the chief. Ich kommt heran. Evi gasped. Lucas suddenly looked very worried, but he put on a fierce face. As the chief turned the brass doorknob from the inside, Lucas took a deep breath and whispered, Let's go, Evi. Barvan de Vries was a tall man with wispy black hair and piercing dark blue eyes. He wore his shiny gold badge proudly and was never without a gun under his sweater. In the work area, he wore his gun on his utility belt. Much to the chief's pleasure, the weapon seemed to intimidate the teenage suspects in front of him. The two, according to his files, were seemingly clean, but were the primary suspects for the murder of Presi Bavver, Evian van Beek, and Lucas Hoysk. Chief de Vries's lips curled. This would be fun. The chief put on a menacing face and looked from Lucas to Evi. The girl was fidgeting slightly, almost unsure of what to think. Lucas, however, seemed relatively calm. It was an odd combination of suspects, especially partners in crime. But then, many odd people had entered the Blauwevmans County Police Station. This pair would be no different from the rest. But, the chief thought, odd combinations often have, shall we say, different stories. Barvan tapped his door with his knuckles, his eyes trained on Evi. His first victim. The chief gestured to Evi, whose eyes widened. Evian van Beek? Evi bit her lip. It looked as if the girl was blinking back tears. Ja, she answered. De Vries nodded approvingly. De Tide is here. Komen, Evian, the chief said, clapping his hands. Evi looked desperately at Lucas. and then at the chief. "Alsjeblieft, een moment?" she asked in a small voice. Lucas gave Evi an alarmed look as the chief processed what the suspect had just said. De Vries scowled, but gave in. "Prima," the chief muttered, his eyebrows furrowing. "Fine," Evi repeated in English, sighing. She turned to Lucas. "I'm telling the truth," she said sternly. "It's the right thing to do." Lucas looked angry for a moment, but then softened. His cheeks were red. "Fine," he spat. "But if we get out of here with no mark on our permanent record, you can thank me." "So you are still—" Evi stopped, eyes glancing toward Barvin. "At least I will have done something for the good of the world. I am, as they say, avenging his death, if that is right context." Evi lowered her voice. "We killed him. Jail time, nothing will take that fact away." Sergeant Patrick Shea stepped out from the open room. His party was being held. He had been leaning on the door sill and listening to the pair's conversation since they had been seated. Sergeant Shea nodded to the chief. "Meneer De Vries," Shea addressed the chief. Barvan raised an eyebrow. "Ja?" he asked. The sergeant gestured to the teens. Shea turned and gave Lucas and Evi a small smile. Then, in crisp English, he said, "These are our killers, sir. Evian van Beek and Lucas Hoysk, convicted of the manslaughter of Presi Bavver, murder in a dream." Halvar sat in his office, browsing the police file of suspects and cursing his brain for not remembering anything regarding the incident. The doctors told him the blow to his head was severe. It gave him a concussion, after all, and that it might take time for his memory to come back, if it did at all. "Hall?" Without turning his eyes from the computer screen, he waved a hand. "Come in, Siegfried." His assistant walked into the office, placing a hand on Halvar's shoulder. "How are you?" "Still can't remember anything," he said, scanning the faces of every known criminal in Norway. He recognized a few of them, having captured them himself, but none rang a bell as to whom might have killed two of his friends and placed one in a coma. "He's got to be here somewhere." "Hall, you should rest," Siegfried said, placing a cup on his desk. Steam rose from it, spreading an invigorating scent of coffee. "We are looking into every possible avenue. I have to regain my memory," he said, scrolling further. He had to. It was the only way. He must have seen the killer just before the hit on the head knocked him out cold. His mind held the only real evidence they had, the only evidence to help turn suspicion off of Halvar himself. Siegfried sighed and retracted her hand. "We talked to Olaf, the studio owner, again. He said he left the place early that evening and didn't see anyone but you and your friends coming in. Nobody else was scheduled for practice either. The single security camera caught no one else entering the building. That camera's position is awkward, Halvar said, rubbing his eyes. He hadn't slept in a day. He didn't like what sleep brought. The killer could have entered through the back or by the window. Did Olaf tell you about his back door? How he's too cheap to have it repaired? Anyone could enter. In fact, could the man himself be responsible? He did complain often about the noise of Halvar and his band playing, even though they paid to rent his studio for practice. Hall, I can't imagine how hard this must be for you. I know how close you were with them, how much music meant to you. I hope that Bjarka makes it, and I hope you get some rest. Halvar sighed and listened to Sigfrida's footsteps leaving the office. The cup of coffee rested on the desk, smelling heavenly. He turned to say thank you, but his assistant was gone. Instead, he noticed the pictures on the office walls, his formal detective license, a photo with the whole police department for Christmas 2 years ago, and a framed picture of him and his 3 friends playing live at a local festival. 2 of them were dead now, 1 in a coma, the result of some lunatic bursting into the studio and killing everybody. Halvar himself survived by sheer luck, it would seem. I'll find out who did this, he thought, turning back to the screen. And no law or moral code can save them from me when I do. He spent the rest of the night searching through the files, as well as his memory, both seemingly void of the information he sought. Eventually, sleep caught up with Halvar, and with it came the nightmare. Each night since the incident, he had been having roughly the same dream. It was almost as if his mind was trying to tell him through dreams what he couldn't remember consciously. Halvar got to relive the murder of his friends every night for the past 2 weeks. He got to see every bloody detail, but never the killer's face. That detail always eluded him, and with each dream, he thought he was getting closer to the truth. Each time, the nightmare would reveal a bit more of what happened. That was if his mind wasn't just making everything up out of trauma. In the dream, he was often in the killer's shoes, after all. But he could never see his face. This night, the dream started as usual. Right in the middle of it, and from the point of view of the killer. Halvar saw himself as the murderer, picking up his guitar and crushing his friend's head with it. They were in the middle of practice and were stunned at the sudden outburst of violence by the intruding killer. Before anyone could react, Halvar smashed the heads of all 3 of his band colleagues with his own guitar. Then the dream shifted, where he could see outside from himself. How he got hit on the head, too, by a figure without a face. The prosecutor then ran away, and when Halvar wanted to follow, the figure disappeared into the shadows. Halvar woke up, sweating and breathing heavily. He looked around and noticed he had fallen asleep in his office. The place was dark, no light coming from the hallway. Everyone must have left already. He grabbed a pen and paper and wrote down everything he could remember from the dream, recording every detail. The drawer by his desk was filled with accounts from his dream, and he used them to correlate the event, searching for consistent patterns and hints. As incredible as it seemed, his dreams were the only clues he had. But he couldn't share them with his colleagues. They would never take it seriously. "The killer used my guitar," Halvar murmured, comparing tonight's dream with the others. "But the last thing I remember was playing on my guitar. Then, nothing. So, whoever did it, I must have trusted them to let them have my guitar." The evidence found at the crime scene clearly pointed at Halvar's guitar as the murder weapon. It had blood and tissue of all 4 of them on its body, all found on one side, suggesting that the killer used it as a club to repeatedly strike at each one. The guitar's body was solid steel and hard plastic, and it cracked under the brutal hits, but did not break apart, surprisingly. So the killer must have known how strong the instrument was, so he could perform precise strike with it and not have it break in the middle of his assault. That would create an opening for the others to defend themselves. The only person that Halvar would entrust his instrument to, and who would know so much about it, other than his band friends, was Olaf himself, the studio owner. Halvar even once took lessons from the man, who showed him a few tricks on the guitar from his heyday as a roadie. It wasn't rational to think that Bjarka would take the guitar, kill the other 2, attempt to kill Halvar, and then knock himself out. How would he do that? And it was just as absurd to think that Halvar himself did it, as was the unspoken suspicion. How would he swing the guitar at himself, knocking himself out with it? The angles didn't match, but the blood and the concussion did. Somebody else must have been present there that night, and the more Halvar thought about it, the more he suspected Olaf. The studio was his. He had access to the camera. The band knew and trusted him. He did complain about the noise, but was that reason enough to attempt a quadruple homicide? Or was there something else? A form of jealousy against Halvar and the band? Olaf did say that he never had a chance to be in a band, but that it was his greatest wish. Halvar checked the clock. It was something past 3 a.m. He considered, looking at the photo of him and his friends. Then he left his office. Olaf's house was next to his studio. It was part of the same building complex, just on the other side, so the owner had privacy as well as quick access to the place. Halvar sat in his car, parked outside the man's house. There was a light turned on inside. Olaf was the one that found us, Halvar thought. He came into the studio and called the police. In the report, the man said he had heard shouts and how the music suddenly stopped. so he had gone to check. The more Halvar considered, the more sense it made. The man pretended to have stumbled upon the murder scene, to have an alibi. Halvar waited in his car, considering whether he should confront the man, considering if he could even do it. As he waited outside of Olaf's house, the pain in his head from the blow returned. Halvar took some painkillers and watched the window, wanting to catch Olaf in some act that would rat him out. In a whirlwind of thoughts, and with a headache pounding, Halvar must have fallen in a pill-induced sleep, as suddenly his mind was back at the incident. This time, he saw more of it. "That sounds terrible, Hall," Bjarka said, grimacing on the drums. "Are you sure you can play the guitar, mate?" Halvar ignored the remark and focused on playing the solo. They were working on a new song, and it was a pain to get it right. "Sounds to me like he's butchering somebody," Damus, the bassist, commented. "Must be the stress at work, I reckon." They laughed. Typical guy talk. Halvar tried his best, but failed. His fingers were just too slow. The solo too technical and complex. His mind was sluggish, indeed from stress at work. There was a dangerous killer on the loose, and they had finally gotten a lead. Halvar just wanted to relax and let go for a few hours with his buddies. But all he could think of was the brutality of the recent murders. "Hey, we're going to get something to eat," Bjarka said. "You want something, Hall?" "No," Halvar said. "I'm good." He just wanted to get the damn solo right. "All right then," Bjarka said. "But don't you try and steal my roles when we come back." They left. Halvar kept practicing. Then Olaf entered the studio. "Hey, mate," the older man said, wearing his long gray hair in a tail. "Sound like you're having some trouble." "Yeah," Halvar said. "I can't do this transition here. It's too fast for me." Halvar showed what he meant by playing the part at half speed. Olaf nodded. "I see. Can I try?" "Sure," Halvar sighed. He handed the man his guitar. "Knock yourself out." "I'll knock you out, with my veteran skill," the man said, and took the guitar. The dream then changed to Halvar being in the killer's shoes and butchering everybody, until seeing himself in third person again, being hit by some man with no face. Halvar ran after the man, and this time he caught him in a corner. The man had long hair. Halvar jolted awake. He was sitting in his car, parked outside of Olaf's home. The light in the house had turned off. "It's him," he thought, breathing heavily. He did it. Halvar got out of the car and walked to the studio entrance. He had the key, as he and his friends were regulars. It was the little hours of the morning, and there was nobody outside, not even a stray dog. Halvar unlocked the door and removed the police tape, entering the crime scene. He knew that the studio and Olaf's house were connected by a passage for practicality. Halvar used the light on his phone to make his way through the dark interior. If it really was you, Olaf. Halvar hurried through the passage, entering the man's living quarters. He'd been there once or twice when Olaf invited them over for a drink. Building his alibi. Plotting, even then, Halvar crossed the living room and climbed the stairs to the man's bedroom. He didn't think of what his plan was. He just wanted to have a look at the man, to see his murderous face. As he came to the bedroom, where he saw the light coming before, Halvar paused. He heard weeping from inside. His heart pounded like a drum, and he burst into the room. Feeling guilt for what you did, the man, lying under the blankets, jumped up in shock. Halvar turned on the light and noticed he had taken out his gun on instinct. Olaf gazed at him with wide eyes, red, as if from crying. "What? Don't deny it! You did it!" Halvar shouted, his hand trembling. "I saw you! It was you!" The man's face was twisted in a mixture of shock and fear. "What are you talking about?" "I saw you in my dream," Halvar said. "You took my guitar, and..." The man was crying. There were candles placed on his windowsill, alongside pictures of Halvar and his friends. The two that had been killed had a rosary around them. He was grieving. "What's all this?" Halvar asked, pointing at the pictures. "They were my friends too," Olaf said. "Your band reminded me of when I was young." His gaze focused on the gun in Halvar's hands. "You think I did it. It wasn't a question, but a statement. One in which Halvar wasn't so sure anymore. He looked into the man's eyes and saw sadness underneath all the shock. "And betrayal. I can't prove it, Hall," Olaf said, sniffing. "But by God, I'm not the man you should be pointing that gun at." "Who then?" Halvar shouted. "Who did it? Who killed my friends and nearly killed me?" He pointed the gun at the man's head. Olaf began weeping. "The guitar was in your hands when I found you." "Yes, the killer wanted to confuse the forensics by framing one of us. No one else came or left the studio. Hall, what are you saying?" Olaf glanced at the gun again, then at Halvar. "Are you here to kill me too?" Halvar balked. Olaf pissed himself, a dark spot appearing on the bed sheets. The man was genuinely afraid of him. Halvar suddenly felt deep shame, and he lowered the gun, running out of the room and out of the house. "No, it can't be," he thought. If Olaf didn't do it, who then? He started the car and drove back home, where he took a bottle of scotch and began drinking. He demanded from his mind to remember all of it, to remember things clearly, without dreams and illusions. His head began hurting, but he didn't take the pills. They would only distract his mind. Halvar emptied the bottle and paced around his room until he collapsed in a corner and wept for his friends. Once again, sleep took over, his body and mind exhausted. This time, the dream picked off as his friends returned with the food. "Where have you been?" Halvar asked. They were gone for nearly 2 hours. Bjarka giggled like a schoolgirl. We went to get food. They all had red faces and were snickering like teenagers. Have you been smoking weed? No, Damus said. They snickered some more. Halvar sighed. We were supposed to practice tonight. You should chill, Detective Oyolf, their lead singer said. You can't play that guitar anyway. He turned to the other two. Hey, maybe we should cut his hair. If he can't play, then he's not a true metal fan and shouldn't have long hair. The three laughed, obviously talking gibberish, but Halvar, being frustrated by his stressful job, having to deal with murderers and psychopaths all day long, just wanted to lose himself in the music with his friends. But for some reason, couldn't get the creative juices flowing, and had enough. Something snapped. He grabbed his guitar and began playing. The guys turned to him. Whoa, look at Hall. He's on fire. Halvar played the solo with fury. He struck every note on the spot. Yeah, man, that's the thing. Then he came to the hard part. He followed Olaf's instructions and sailed through it, racing to the finale. Seems Hall's been practicing while we were smoking. Halvar's muscles tensed as he got to where he always failed. He struck the notes, one by one, the pick flying over the strings. But his fury was too much. He broke a string, and the guys giggled. Halvar smacked Bjarka straight in his laughing face with the guitar. The man fell over, like a chopped log. Then he hit Damus, who was too stoned to register what was going on. Halvar repeatedly hit the man's head until it cracked, and the guitar strings vibrated from the impact, playing a sinister echo. Olaf wanted to run away, but Halvar chopped him down by hitting his side first, and then smashing the man's head. Breathing heavily, feeling all his frustration boiling in him, Halvar screamed and headbanged into the guitar's body repeatedly until he collapsed to the floor, unconscious. The dream shifted outside himself, and he could see Olaf stumbling upon the aftermath, mortified. Halvar jumped up on his feet as the doorbell rang. His fists were clenched, as though he still held the guitar, and he breathed heavily, confused. He was at home. He just woke up from a dream. Someone was at the door. Did I really kill them? Halvar ran a hand through his sweaty hair and walked to the door. He took one deep breath and opened it. It was Sigfrida, with two other officers by her side, Halvar's colleagues. Hall? She said, her voice painful. Yeah? He groaned. Bjarka woke up. We have some questions. Pretty, yet deadly. The warmth of it all was intoxicating. Her heartbeat went crazy as the blood was trickling down her face, onto her chin, and down onto the marble floor. Why did this feel so good? Why was this easier and easier? Addicting. The crowd cheering made her feel the world spinning around her, like that one time she tried drugs. Would this be just as hard to give up on like the drugs as well? the constant craving for that feeling, but not the aftermath. She wondered what the aftermath would feel like. But for now, there were still 4 more people she needed to worry about before she could think of tomorrow's reality. Standing over the corpse, Alex just now noticed the gruesomeness of what she did. This was a hate fight as well. All that mocking in the back rooms, all those invasive touches and stares that made her feel violated. Growling, she smacked her head with her foot, the crack of her bones making Alex almost gasp in pleasure. She was dead, and this was her punishment. Now her pretty white dress that Kira mocked her for was stained red with her blood. A strap was ripped, but she didn't care. The pretty girl won, turning towards the crowd. Her eyes were sparkling with adrenaline, euphoria taking over her as she smiled bright and bowed before skipping off the stage. This wasn't the contest she signed up for, but it was the contest she was going to win, no matter what. "Good job, Sunshine," Damien muttered as she passed by him, smirking. "Thank you, kind sir. See you in the finals." With a wink, she passed him. She knew he was going to win the next fight, so that made the 2 of them. Going back to her changing room, people were already waiting for her, ready to clean her up, prep her hair, and change her dress. But the blood was going to stay untouched, just like any other small wounds. It was their medal to go in the next round. Alex wasn't used to any of this, especially this type of medals that showed their passing. Usually, it would be a pin or some tacky golden star. This was nothing she prepared herself for, and from the introduction, no one was specifically prepared for it. If they had the luck in their life to get in any physical altercation and win, that was a plus. It all started with some pretty faces, nice bodies, and preppy clothes. But this was so much more now that she was so deep into it. As she left herself in the hands of the people in the room to take off her clothes and take care of her, she couldn't help but wonder how she came this far, how she started to enjoy that gruesome stage that was now bathed in blood, the lights all over them, the masked crowd enjoying every second of it. 2 hours ago, there were 20 people. Now there were only 3. Her long red dress with a slit down from her thigh, down, low cut, both back and the front, was long gone. Alex loved that dress, and she loved how it showed off her curves and long legs. But now it was long destroyed. Glancing over to the side of the room, on a rack, there laid all her torn-up dresses that she wore since all started. Whoever won was going to have their battle clothes sold. A token of this contest. The money going towards the winner. The thought of people buying ripped up and bloodied clothes made her wonder why people would spend money on such things. But she soon realized why. All those dresses were now tied to a battle, to a crime, and success at staying alive, being the hunter, not the prey. A token from the battles, and a piece of the contest itself. They were still calling it a contest, not just a fight until death. If they wanted help in the last round, they needed to win the hearts of the crowd, voting each round on who would win, and then at the end of each fight, keeping scores. It was a system from 1 to 5. They revealed what would happen at the end. The one that got the highest rating would mean they are the public's favorite, which would bring its benefits. Not sure of what that meant, they knew it must be something good, so they needed to put on their best face, even as they killed brutally. Some of them sadly forgot this was a contest in the end, and the votes counted, so Bruce ignored it. He thought only of the end goal, killing everyone in order to survive. The crowd wanted foreplay. They wanted dirty fights, but with fair chances. The girls never fought against the boys, not until the finale round. They wanted the thrill of a long, bloody fight, hearing them growl and cuss with each new wound, with each new bruise and cut, seeing them fight for their lives, seeing the growing desperation as one of them realized this could have been the end, and tough decisions were going to be taken. Bruce wasn't aware of it, and snapped the opponent's neck in a matter of seconds. He saw a weak point and took it, finishing it all without giving the crowd what they wanted. The silence after that was morbid. No reaction from anyone, just Bruce in the middle of the scene, arms spread, wanting to challenge the world itself, feeling invulnerable. What he didn't know was that no one liked that, and they were ready to challenge him back. Red buttons lit all over the room. Alex could swear that she saw those red lights flicker inside the crowd's eyes, thirsting for the blood they didn't get. He got one from everyone. If just one person would have given him another score, he could have survived. But those were not the rules. Tied up, every participant still alive was meant to wound him, not fatal, but in an appealing way that would make the crowd tremble in pleasure. That, or they would join his faith. Whoever had the highest score in that round would get the best prop for the next round. Kira won it by being her slutty self, yet she still died. Looking at the dried blood under her nails, the image of her nails dragging down on Kira's face made her shiver. What did she become? From the first round lamb, she now became a cheetah. She was fast and agile, thanks to the years of gymnastic her mom forced her into taking when she was 6. It was now paying off. What would her mother think of seeing her like this? Knowing her little baby killed and and killed? Maybe she didn't have to know. All was good. She was alive, and she could be hugged by her mother away. A long, nice bath, washing away all the blood, and together with it, her sins. She would go to church. She would wear her most modest white dress and braid her hair like her mother did ages ago when they would go there. "You are good to go, princess." The woman smiled gently towards her, just like a grandmother. Kind eyes and deep wrinkles next to her eyes when she would smile. She looked so out of this picture, and yet she was the one that cleaned the blood off and nurtured her wounds. If she could look at her with this kindness, even after knowing and seeing all she did, her mother will as well. She loved her, her little angel. "This is suiting." Alex exhaled as she stared at herself in the mirror. An angel. Another white dress, long and flowy. A pair of wings and a sparkling tiara. The blood wasn't even bothering her. It looked like a second skin now, a piece of her, something that she shall never be able to wash, always seeing it stain her in the mirror. The next thing she knew was that she was back on the stage, face to face with Damien, dressed as the devil itself, black shirt and burgundy vest, shiny shoes and black pants, tiny red horns on his head. He was beautiful, she had to admit to herself once again. And if this was a normal contest, she could imagine herself at the end of it, with him at her side, arm around her waist, both winners, prizes in their hands. A pretty image. But there was going to be just one winner, and the prize would be their own lives, still being alive. "You look angelic." He laughed, his fingers gently tracing her face in the eyes of the crowd. Smiling, she placed her hand over his, keeping it on her cheek. So warm and gentle, making her insides wrestle inside of her. The thrill she felt as she won. But those long fingers were going to soon strangle her, digging deep into her, wanting her dead. "You look devilish yourself." She smiled as she placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat so close. She didn't want this. She wanted to be done with this bloodshed. But it was her or him. Getting close to him, their lips gently touching, she gasped as he kissed her back, his hand on her neck, pulling her closer. This was what the crowd wanted, right? A show. To see them suffer. For them to feel their pain while they weren't losing anything. A love story would make this so much better. A cliché. But it was a cliché because people enjoyed it, always watching it. Kissing harder, she moved her hand towards her wings, detaching one, grabbing tight. Before she left the dressing room, the showmaster brought her another pair of wings, congratulating her on her scores and her new prop. One glance towards the old lady, and she realized what it meant. She saw her assemble the wings, so now she did the opposite, cutting her hand on the blade, grabbing tight on it, and lifting her hand, she stabbed the wing deeply in the back of Damien, just as he used one of his horns, stabbing her in the back as well. Both collapsing on their knees, neither of them stopped the kiss, becoming just more intense as the crowd gasped. It was just a matter of time of who would bleed faster, who would turn cold. They were going to die in their own way, and they were going to wait. Murderer's delight, murderer's delight. Mistress Gale, as she was known, has developed a certain lifestyle that required her to invent methods to maintain it. The woman understood the importance of keeping a job, as she was taught by her elders, because she engaged in activities that she could not afford by legal means. Mistress Gale exploited other people to supplement her lifestyle. She would steal from the elderly people whose homes she worked at as a caregiver. When tragedy struck her family, she learned to offer her family members a place to live in her home in order to exploit them for their money. When her niece was misbehaving and her sister was not a good mother, Mistress Gale housed her in her home. The young girl's father paid the exploiter to let his daughter live with the mistress of darkness. Exploitation was something that she became an expert at due to her troubled childhood. As a young girl who was sexually abused by her father, Barbara learned early that she could get paid to keep her mouth shut. Since the adults in her life didn't believe the account that she gave the first time that her uncle exposed himself to her, she often would take the money that he offered her to keep quiet. The violence and sexual exploitations that was experienced by Gale forever changed her soul. She became angry, violent, and grew up with a darkness in her that no amount of light could change. When her parents would have alcohol in the home, Gale and her siblings would consume it as an escape from the trauma of living in an abusive home. By the time that she was 18, the antagonist had become an alcoholic. In November of 1980, the death of Lillian Adler, Gale's mother, contributed to her already damaged psyche. Her other siblings had also been abused by the patriarch of the Adler family. But Gale fooled herself into believing that she was the only one. Although one of her younger sisters had begged her not to leave her, and the youngest one alone with their father, 23-year-old could not feel any empathy for them. Even at the young age of 23, she already had lost her sense of compassion or mercy for others. Mistress Gale had become her abuser. She developed a God complex and told herself that the world owed her everything. This complex caused her to hate anyone who told her no. The downward spiral into madness made her become spiteful. Abuse and trauma untreated, causes an individual to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. When when a situation that is beyond the individual's control, the person feels a need to control others and whatever situation he or she is in at the moment. Mistress Gale loved to be in the company of violent men because she had developed a soul tie to them. Whenever other females came around, she would see them as a threat. She didn't have too many female friends. Loved to control other women, even in their own homes. On a cold winter's night, Mistress Gale found herself at the home of one of her male friends. The other people that were there were men only, and they were all drinking. Gale thought that she could trust her friend Eugene, but soon found out that was not the case. The men ended up gang raping her, and they paid Eugene to allow it to happen to Mistress Gale. This traumatic event was the final straw for her, and she soon became a psychopath. Mistress Gale had a brother who was what one could describe as a wimpy man. He was easy to influence and never wanted to be in control of his own life. Since they were raised in a dysfunctional home, Henry never developed a sense of self-worth. He wasn't taught how to be an independent man standing on his own feet. Henry learned to depend on his sister and the females in his family. They allowed him to live in their homes, cooked for him, paid his bills, and shopped for him whenever he needed clothing. This codependency was an opportunity to be exploited by Mistress Gale, his now psychopathic sister. January of 1991 came around, and Henry needed new clothes. He gave his sister money to purchase him a new wardrobe, wanting to keep some of the money for herself to maintain her alcohol addiction. Mistress Gale returned home with no receipt, verifying how much money she had actually spent on her brother's clothing. The only time that Henry would stand up for himself was when he was full of liquid courage. When the two siblings became engaged in an argument about the brother's change, it led to the sister going to the hospital via ambulance. While they were arguing, Mistress Gale didn't see the huge, empty bottle of liquor that her brother hit her with. Head injuries causes a change of an individual's personality. With all of the previous drama in her life, there was no way that the main character of this story could be a decent person again. She spent the rest of her life causing trouble and mayhem to anyone in her life. Although her brother was remorseful for what he had done to her, Gale used the injury that she sustained as a way to gain even more control of her brother. When others would attempt to hold her accountable for her actions, he would defend her. She continued to exploit any situation that she could, and when opportunity presented itself, she figured that she could kill two birds with one stone. The father of the family retired after so many years of working as a farmer. He moved into a retirement building. Harry Adler, was a man who couldn't control his own fleshly desires. Not only did he molest his own daughters, drink, and use drugs, he had a gambling monkey on his back. This lifestyle started to take effect on his health. He found himself with little mobility, kidney trouble, and high blood pressure. Deteriorating health didn't stop him from frequenting the gambling casinos of Louisiana. He learned how to utilize the bus system where he lived to get around. While he was engaging in his wobbling escapes, Harry also loved to dine on the buffets that the casinos offered to their patrons. The aging father of 7 ate something that didn't agree with the other toxins that were already in his body. He became ill and was rushed to the hospital in Texas. Although he had signed a "do not resuscitate" document in the event that he became ill, his troubled daughter saw this as an opportunity to get even with him and get money from his life insurance policy, enlisting the aid of her partner in crime. Gail developed a scheme to murder her father. When the doctors called the family into the hospital to inform them that it was not a high probability that their father would live, they made the decision to take him off of life support. As the family members went in to see their father for the last time, Leonard, his illegitimate son with his oldest daughter, came out of his room, claiming that something went wrong with his father while he was in the room with him. This turned out to be a lie, because he and Mistress Gail had decided to end his life in the event that he didn't die on his own. This attempt to get money was a waste of time, because he had left his daughter, Carmen, as beneficiary on his life insurance policy. The policy included just enough finances to give him a proper funeral and burial. Unable to prove that her father was murdered, Carmen started seeking God's justice for her father's murder. In 2016, Leonard starting losing the use of his eyes and is slowly becoming blind. Mistress Gail has fallen down several times, down a flight of stairs, and is suffering with pain in her body every day. She is living in an environment with her daughter that she can't manipulate and has to submit to her rules. Accusation. Pounding the tarmac, she bolted down the garden path like an Olympic champion at the start gun. She quickened her pace to an all-out sprint, whilst the springing, graceful steps of 20 miles earlier had long since disappeared. The slapping noise of her flip-flops resonated around the vandalized walls of the housing estate with a clanging echo. She didn't know where she was, nor did she know where she was heading, but she knew she had to get far away from him. Flashing in her eyes, an image of a wedding dress consumed her thoughts. She wanted to tear it and rip it up and throw it at him. Throw it at the man that she could never marry. For God's sake, I'm only 16. I can't get married, she thought. Tears blinded her, and she turned, running as quickly as her long legs could carry her. She bolted down the alley The pounding noise of her flip-flops reverberated off the walls of the alley, along with a clanging echo that matched her heart, throbbing inside her chest, filling up with acid. Her legs couldn't go on anymore. There she saw it, a barn. It blossomed on the hill amid the grass and the meadow flowers, as if one day it sprung up from some precious seed. I have to go in there, just for a little while, and I will go back home soon, she thought. Opening the door, the smell hit her first as she lugged open the unwieldy, russet-painted door adorned with its tired hinges that creaked like the moaning of cantankerous old men collapsing down. Her legs couldn't carry her anymore. They were filled with toxins, lost in the rhythmic percussions of her steady breathing. She closed her eyes and imagined herself in college and getting a degree. However, that dream seemed so unrealistic, invading her steady breaths. A sound of murmuring pervaded the ambiance, and it was coming from outside. Lifting herself up, she carried herself forward and looked out of the cracks in the door. In the middle, a man was begging on his knees. She saw that his face was bearing with the congealed blood, and his clothes were in an utter mess. However, they showed him no mercy. Surrounding him, a tall man was clutching onto his shirt and ripping it apart. In front of him, a much slender man gave him a red eye. His left eye was swollen. He couldn't be seeing a thing out of that, and his face was more purple than brown. She couldn't look. Her eyes widened, and lip trembled. Plummeting onto the floor, the man laid there. He was dead. Calling out from a distance, she could hear a voice telling them to bury him there. Nevertheless, she couldn't see who it was and couldn't seem to recognize this voice. Just like minions, all the men dug holes with shovels and buried the man, leaving no evidence behind. Tears burst forth like water from a dam spilling across her face. The muscle of her chin trembled like a small child. Salty drops fell from her chin, drenching her kurti. Many thoughts pervaded into her mind. She had never seen these people before, even though she lived in a small village in Pakistan. Going towards the way she came, she ran back home. I can't be here anymore, she thought. Howling wildly, the rain lashes the concrete breeze that made her lose control. She ran through a maze of buildings and winding side streets as the sky rumbled, and heavy rain bounced off the cobblestones. A storm smothered the sun, graying the world around her. Drops of rain beat against her skin like hammers. Reaching home, she ran up to her apartment and banged on the door. Getting inside, she ran to her room and closed the door. Overpowering all her emotions, the face of the dead man haunted her, playing the story over and over again. She fell asleep and let her thoughts turn all her dreams into nightmares. Waking up in the morning, she turned on the news and waited. There is a kind of waiting that feels like gentle, onshore breezes kissing salty stones. Nevertheless, this is not what she was feeling today. The news finished, and there was nothing about this missing man. How strange, she thought. Months go on, and there is no sign of this man. Befuddlement infiltrated into her mind. Who was this man? And most importantly, why was he dead? After months of waiting, she saw it. Sitting there on the sofa, she saw it on the news. It was exactly the same man that got killed, and apparently he was missing. So they didn't know that he's dead, she thought. Her mouth pursed and slightly loosed. She looked up at the TV, her eyes fixed, as if this was the only thing that mattered in this world. She had to go, running forward. She had to stop. She wheezes as her burning lungs gasp for air. Her legs feel numb and unsteady, painfully sore. Her throat felt dry, so uncomfortably dry. Clothes' long, blonde-brown hair were clinging onto the tarmac, no different than if she runs through a rainstorm. Unable to go on, she stopped running, gasping for air, but she knew she had to go on. At the corner of the road, there lay walls as thick as the medieval castle, and windows almost as mean. There's no flicker of light within, and the thick wooden doors were closed. Going into the police station, she felt a soft panic growing inside of her. The steps she took were just increasing this amount. It will fade if I back away, but then I have to do this all again another time. It will grow if I let these thoughts swirl into a vortex of stupidity, eating their own tail. Or I can breathe real slow. Let the thoughts leak into the ether and be the real boss of myself, she thought. Approaching the officer, she sat down and told him about what she had seen that night. She told him about the beating and about them burying the dead man. Walking past him, a tall man looked at her, and suddenly she remembered him. It was the same man that clung to his shirt that night. Getting up off her seat, she pointed at the tall man. Sweat trickled down her face and etched marks onto her skin. But she had to do this. Miss, I think you are getting a bit hysterical here. This man works with us, and he would never do such a thing, said the officer. Whist. He examined her up and down. He couldn't understand her. She looked like she was telling the truth. But Hassan couldn't have done this. I do trust him, thought the officer, and he was part of the Commander League, and is soon to get promoted into officer. Telling her to wait in the courtroom, he dismisses her so that he could talk to other members of the department. Just stepping into the courtroom is making her breathing rapid and shallow. She can feel her pulse pounding in her temples. It's a relief to get to the chair. Otherwise I would have tripped, she thought. Now Only silence lingers in the air. She shivers in the claustrophobic common room and waits for the signal. But a small sigh of anxiety leaps out of her mouth. Tersely, her eyes flicker to the building's whist. She bit her nails to the core, beckoning her to come in. The same officer takes her back into the office. However, they go further in, and it's like nowhere she has actually ever seen before. The fear sits on her like a pillow over her mouth and nose. Doubting her decisions, she tells herself that she had made the right decision. Once again, fear found her. It spoke to her in its cackling voice. It told her legs to go weak, her stomach to lurch, and her heart to ache, as that is what happened to her. She knew she had to keep going, because the truth was just seconds away. Stepping into an exquisite office, she could see the posters hanging and the files stacked up neatly. Getting introduced to the other officers, she sat down, and in the process, she saw the slender man and recognized him immediately, because he was the one who punched the dead man, and instantaneously, she got off her seat. This is the man who punched the dead man. Laughing hysterically, all the officers got up off their seats and surrounded her, just like they did with the dead man. The officer who she met first started talking. "I believe that it is you who killed him," said the officer. "Isn't that right, Commander Abad?" "Yes," replied the commander. The voice sounded so familiar in her head, but why, she thought. Then it clicked in. He was voice who told them to bury the dead man. Feeling an overwhelming feeling of disgust, she stood up and went towards the commander. "You did all of this," she snarled. "No, I didn't. Officers, can you please put her behind bars? And that is an order," replied the commander. Locking up her hands, the officers grabbed into her shoulders and took her away. Trying to justify her case, she had no luck. The constricted feeling grew inside of her, as if she was strangled by just the air about her. She glances upward to the surface, and her heart rate rises. The voice of caution whispers softly not to rise so fast, but it can't break through the scream for unfiltered rays and fresh air. From the moment she saw it, it repulsed her. These walls cannot hold a prayer, nor can hold a spirit. And I belong here, she thought. Surrounded by 4 white walls, there was nothing else to do but stare at them, to look at the paint that had started to chip off as time passed, or gouged by other prisoners. Anything to pass time, slowly going mad, theorizing absurd meanings from the wall's blank stare. And this is what I would be doing here, she thought, getting thrown into prison. She screamed and shouted like there was no tomorrow, and flung her arms across the cell. I can't stay here, she thought, and not for something I didn't even do. "I did not kill the man. It wasn't me," she shouted. But no one heard her. No one ever did. "Citizens, death." She trembled uncontrollably as he pushed the muzzle into her forehead. Nobody moves or makes a sound. Any heroics, bullets will start flying. As you can probably tell, this is a bank heist. Cooperate, and I'll spare you all your lives. Please don't kill me. I'll take you to the vault right now. Shut it. I decide when we go," he replied as he jarred her head back with the barrel. The hostages looked on in slouched postures, with furrowed brows and gaping mouths, wondering if the gun's magazine was loaded or not. For the bank manager's sake, they hoped it wasn't, and that he was pretending to have a loaded gun, because they believed this sort of heist was to scare people into submission with no real intention to harm them. After all, it was only one guy, not a group of robbers. "Hey, mister, my wife's so scared, her water has just broken," exclaimed a hostage. "We need medics, quickly." "I said no heroics," he exclaimed, striking the butt of the gun to the bank manager's temple. She fell in a heap, motionless. "Now look at what you've made me do. I mean it, people. Don't try my patience, or one by one, it'll be you lot getting the bullet. Are you crazy? My wife is in pain. She thinks the baby is in the wrong position. We need a doctor now." He sighed and approached the pregnant woman and knelt by her side. She was shaking and sweating uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry about this, but I can't have you or your husband messing this up. There's $20 million in the vault, and I want some of it, no matter what the cost. Please, just take the money and go quickly. We'll say nothing to the police," replied the woman. The bank manager opened her eyes. She sat up, propping her back against the wall. All she heard was 2 shots fired, followed by a cacophony of screams and chaos. He fired another shot to the ceiling, and the room fell silent. Order was restored. "Right, you lot, clean the blood up, and then drag the pregnant woman and her husband over to the far corner," he demanded. "Are you fucking crazy, man? You've killed an unborn baby and the mother and father," exclaimed another hostage. "In this game, there's always collateral damage. Now shut it," he said, training the Glock on him. He glanced through a window. The street outside Citizen Bank was as normal as he'd expected. So far, 2 minutes had passed since he'd entered the bank. There was another 5 minutes before the NYPD would have the building surrounded. So far, so good. With the entrance door locked, nobody had approached or tried to enter the bank. Still partially dazed, the bank manager attempted to stand. She stumbled, but he soon skittered back to her and pushed her to the floor. "Stay down until I say otherwise, got it?" He slid the rucksack from his back and pulled out a large bag of cable ties and tied her hands behind her back. Then he tied her legs, leaving enough movement for her to walk, but not run. With 2 less hostages to not worry about, he made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He tied her legs, leaving enough movement for her to walk, but not run. With 2 less hostages to not worry about, he made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He made quick time in using more ties to tie her hands. He made quick time in using more ties to tie her to bound the other 8 hostages. Okay, people, if I hear the slightest of sounds or sense the smallest of movements, one of you will be joining those bodies over there. He hauled the bank manager to her feet and pushed her in front to lead the way to the vault. She stumbled and fell to her knees with a hard thud. He grabbed her hair and wrenched her back to her feet. She screamed, and the hostages felt her pain. In retaliation, she spun and spat in his face. She quickly felt the back of his hand make contact with her cheekbone. It sent her tumbling for a second time, but she didn't get up. He didn't let her. Instead, he grabbed her hair and dragged her to the vault. The hostages winced, imagining her discomfort as her legs flailed in a futile attempt to stall him. Now that he's down in the vault, we have to do something? Whispered a hostage. He looked mid-30s, with a physique of a guy that worships a gym. Are you out of your fucking mind, sir? You heard what the guy said, right? If you can cut me loose, I can take him. I'm ex-military. Apprehension is my forte. I've got a small knife in my back pocket. Can you reach it? You're gonna get us all killed trying to be the hero. NYPD will be here soon. They'll take him out. Only if someone has activated the alarm. There were moments of silence. He was waiting for a reply that never came. I thought not. But the guy keeps checking his watch, and he thinks they're on their way. I can activate the alarm so the cops know, and then I'll take him out. No, man. You're not hearing me. I can't let you do this. I've got a wife and kids. He'll shoot us all. What do the rest of you think? Are you with me? The rest of the hostages didn't respond. You try anything, man. I'll take you down myself. Just trust me, man. It's worth a try, replied a hostage. He's trained. He knows what he's doing. The locks released. He turned the catch, and the door to the vault swung open. What the fuck? He said, staring into the barrel of a Glock 19. You didn't tell me there was security in the vault, he said to the manager. She connected with his gaze and dropped her shoulders. I ain't security, replied the guy standing at the entrance of the vault. Stop what you're doing, and nobody else has to get hurt. It was a stalemate situation. Both guys had their guns trained at each other, fingers twitching at the triggers, and then, bang, the guy in the entrance to the vault fell. He was soon surrounded by a pool of his own blood. He began to load as much cash as he could into the 2 large holdalls by his side. He could hardly zip them up, but to his estimation, he had at least $600,000 in each. Way less than what he wanted, but enough to start up somewhere new. With one bag on his back and the other in his left hand, he grabbed her hair with his right and dragged her back to the main foyer, where he noticed one of the hostages was missing. From out of nowhere, the hostage charged toward him, thigh and drived him to the floor, like the New York Giants were playing out in front of them. They tussled about, but the hostage found himself being overpowered and had the barrel of the Glock shoved in his mouth. Bang. All the remaining hostages jump out of their skins as blood and bits of brain matter splattered all over them. The hostage lay there in a bloody, gory mess that was too much for most of them to look. "Hey, mister," we tried to tell him it was a stupid idea, but he didn't listen, replied one of the hostages. "He's paid with his life for his insubordination." He checked his watch, and 4 minutes had passed. "Time to check out. The manager is coming with me. Inform the police I have her as my hostage, and any attempt to intercept me, and she gets the bullet, right?" Exiting the Citizen Bank, he threw the hold-alls in the trunk of his General Lee, while the bank manager got into the passenger side. He put the pedal to the metal and sped his way along Valley Stream. There were no police in sight. Perhaps the NYPD had other emergencies, he thought. He took a left and followed the sign that was heading for Brooklyn. "Okay, Max, you can stop calling me the bank manager now," said Elizabeth. "And you didn't have to be so rough on me. It had to look like you were another hostage. I just hope when you shot that guy in the vault, you were obscured from the cameras so it looked like me. But how did we miss that guy? I think I did good shooting him, but too many mistakes were made this time. I should have accounted for the guy in the vault." "Yeah, but you dealt with him pretty quick. From how we played it out, the cops will think you were innocent. But what about the hostage that thigh and drived you? If you hadn't have got the better of him, we wouldn't be here now. We've got enough money, and I don't have to work in a shitty bank anymore." He took another left and entered on to Interstate 678. He leant over to the passenger's seat. Their lips engage. "New life. Here we come," she said. The Plunderers' bank robbery and waltzing have a lot in common. Both have defined rhythms, and they're better with a partner. After waiting my turn, like an everyday customer, I handed my note and a paper sack to the blonde girl behind the counter while pulling back my sport coat to show her the butt of my pistol. The note read, "This is a robbery. Remain calm so no one gets hurt. Fill the sack from your drawer. Have a nice day." When she scanned my note, her eyes bulged and flicked from side to side. Her frightened blue peepers filled with disbelief as she stared at me to see if this was a prank. I smiled like a friend. "Please fill it up." With trembling fingers, she stuffed bills into the sack as if she'd win a prize for the fullest bag. The gorilla behind me noticed something wrong. Maybe the sweat-gouging channels through the quivering blonde's rouge tipped him off. He grunted and grabbed me in a bear hug, pinning my arms. My Marine training kicked in and I stomped the arch of his foot with the sharp leather heel of my polished Oxfords. He winced and loosened his grip. This gave me enough slack to reach behind and twist his balls. He yipped like an injured puppy and let go, slowly sinking to the floor. The bank patrons turned to stare at the commotion, unsure what was happening. I reached through the teller's wicket and yanked the half-filled sack of money from the blonde's jittery hands as my assailant rolled on the floor, grabbing his crotch. One of the suits in the back reached for a phone. Time to go. I strolled out of the bank before anyone attempted to jump me. Outside the bank, I wanted to run, but nothing attracts attention more than a man running from a bank with a bag in his hand. The alarm clanged, and I turned towards the bank like the other pedestrians, plastering a puzzled look on my face. A siren wailed in the distance. Sweat beaded my forehead, and I lengthened my strides short of a power walk. When I reached the corner, white exhaust flowed from the red Edsel coupe, and its big V8 growled, ready to whisk me to safety. I jumped in the passenger seat, and Marge drove away at 30 miles per hour. 2 police cruisers screamed past us in the other lane. Now, we'd have to ditch this flashy car in case anyone noticed it fleeing the scene. Marge and I have been robbing banks since I got out of the Marines in '53. My posting to Korea separated us for 3 agonizing years. And when I got back to the States, we promised each other we'd never be apart again. Although we talked about it, we never got married. We both felt that a piece of government parchment would not make us love each other any more than we did. When our cash ran low, we'd find a suitable bank in a small town, make an unauthorized withdrawal, and live comfortably on the proceeds for a few months. As long as we didn't take too much or go to the well too often, the local cops forgot us, and the FBI had enough problems with organized crime to worry about a small-town bank robbery. We never hit the same town twice. Our life between jobs was quiet and measured, spending the winter in Florida, soaking up the sun like other tourists. We danced every Saturday night and fished the local lakes. Marge loved the fall colors, so we spent September in New England before turning south for the winter. I don't remember the name of the town in Minnesota when we ran low on cash. While Marge gassed up the car, I got us a table in the Moosehead Diner. Over the blue plate special of corned beef and hash, I decided I wanted to go fishing. Margie, I've been thinking, it would be a shame to be in northern Minnesota and not go walleye fishing. How about we rent a cabin after this job and go fishing for the weekend? Marge placed her napkin on the table and pursed her lips. Okay, Harry, but all the cabins are probably rented. I reached for her hand. This is the end of the season, and we'll find a cabin somewhere, just for the weekend. Then we'll head for Vermont. She squeezed my hand and ran her thumb over my knuckles. We'll need some bait. I hadn't thought that far ahead. We'll stop at a bait shop and pick up some minnows. Or, if you'd rather, you can watch me fish. She removed her cat's eyeglasses with the fake rhinestones and leaned over the table. Not on your life, Buster. You fish. I fish. And I'll catch bigger fish. Just you watch me. I finished my coffee left a $10 bill on the table, and wiped the crumbs off my tie. I'm going to the little boy's room, and then to work. As I walked across the street to the Imperial Bank, Marge parked the car around the corner. We took the North Road out of town towards Canada and doubled back south on a series of gravel concession roads. Navigation was Marge's job. When we hit the interstate, we turned east towards New England. The cops must have figured it out, or got lucky. They'd had 10 years to learn out our pattern. When we turned onto the interstate, 2 police cruisers, nose to nose, blocked our path to freedom. Blue and red lights flashed, and cops leaned across the hoods, pointing shotguns at us. 2 more cruisers pulled out of a side road and blocked our retreat. Marge slowed as we approached the roadblock and parked on the shoulder. A cop with a bullhorn yelled, "Get out of the car and lay on the ground." Marge turned off the ignition and gripped the wheel with hands at 10 and 2 while staring out the windshield. "Goodbye, Harry." I wiped a tear from my eye. "Goodbye, Marge." I drew my pistol and shot her through the ear. Blood spattered the windshield and side window as she slumped on the driver's door. I put the pistol in my mouth and pulled the trigger. Baby revenge, Shalini. Life in New York seems to be carrying on as usual. Sirens are wailing in the air. The smell of hot dogs and coffee mingled in the air. The noise of the traffic, honks blaring, traffic and pedestrian lights beeping filled the air, along with jazz music coming from shops. Somewhere, I could hear the subway train rumbling into the station, but in every New Yorker's mouth is the latest gossip news. The murder of the infamous supermodel, Laura Myers, who was pushed from her balcony of her penthouse and plunged to death by her ex-boyfriend, Lyle Summers. And few hours ago, Lyle Summers confessed for the murder of Laura Myers. I walk down the sidewalk, bumping onto people, hurrying back to my apartment. On the way, I stop over at the newsstand. On the front page of every magazines and newspapers was the picture of Laura Myers, looking glamorous, in a photo shoot on one side, with the picture of Lyle Summers, looking gaunt and disheveled, leaving the Manhattan police precinct. I pick up a newspaper and read the front headlines. The supermodel fell on her death. Boyfriend responsible for the murder. The headlines sounds like something out of a crime show. I paid a disgruntled-looking man who owns the newsstand and then shovel the newspaper into my bag before heading towards the subway station. My phone starts ringing, and I groaned as I look at the number on the screen. It was my friend, Jenna, who was calling. "Hey, Jen, I answered, but Jenna broke in. "Shalini, have you heard the news?" Jenna shrieked. "Laura is murdered." "Yeah, it's the talk of the day," I mumbled as I climbed down the stairs to the subway station. "Hey, Jen, I am going to be on Subway. I'll call you back." And I cut off the connection before Jenna could reply. I got into the train and then sit next to two women who seemed to be carrying on some excited conversation. Little did I realize, as I sit next to them, that they were, of course, talking about Laura Myers' murder. I, anyway, sit next to them and pretend to be absorbed into my phone. "Oh my God, I can't believe Laura is dead," one of the women exclaimed, as if she was sad that she lost her sister or something. "Rather murdered. By her boyfriend Lyle," the other woman snorted. "God, Laura and Lyle are not made for each other. I mean, I don't even know why a glamorous supermodel like Laura would date a nobody like Lyle. After all I heard, he is just a bartender working in some bar in Brooklyn. Did you hear the latest grapevine? Apparently, Laura was having an affair with Joshua Schoenberg." The Joshua Schoenberg? Like the Senator Schoenberg's nephew? The one who looks so handsome, like a movie star? Like Ian Somerhalder? Yeah, that one. That's Lyle was jealous and upset, and that's why he ended up killing Laura. The woman shakes her head like she is disgusted. About a month ago, at a fashion show, Laura and Lyle got into a heated argument that the security had called in to escort Lyle out. Well, finally, Laura decided to move with someone of her league, the woman replied. Joshua and Laura would make perfect couple, rather than her and that bartender. I didn't realize that I was gripping my phone so hard that my knuckles were turning white. I had to prevent myself from lashing out at them, but they don't know who I am. To them, I am just a working woman on my way home after a busy day at work. Thankfully, I got off from the train and walked quickly towards my apartment, leaving behind the noise and into a somewhat bum and quiet neighborhood. I fumble with my apartment keys and quickly enter into my room, closing the door behind me. I dump my bag on the sofa and then sit heavily on the sofa and start sobbing. I then wipe my eyes with my hands and then get up, breathing deeply. Slowly, I dialed a number. After about a few rings, she picked it up. "Mama!" I started sobbing into the phone. Ciao. A few days before, I look at the pregnancy test and see the 2 lines on the stick. I am pregnant with Joshua Schoenberg's child. Should I feel joyous? I should, but lately I didn't. Joshua was not like the man I used to love. He told me that it was embarrassing to introduce me to his family because I am not white. I am a Sri Lankan. Then why did you date me? I have yelled at him. To my anger, Joshua simply shrugged. Because I enjoyed dating you, he replied with a smirk on his face. And gradually, I realized that he was having an affair, not just with an ordinary woman but with a glamorous supermodel named Laura Myers. He had taken her to places where he would never take me, and had even introduced Laura to his sister, Margot. Tears streamed down on my cheeks as I realize that he doesn't love me the way he does with Laura Myers. Racism is involved in this. I thought Joshua didn't have any racism in him. considering he was half Jewish through his father, whose family emigrated from Europe. But Joshua was too embarrassed to introduce me even to his family, because I was not white. Nonetheless, I decided to call Joshua and tell him the news. With shaking hands, I dial his number. After about 5 minutes, he answered the phone. "What now, Shalini?" he answered gruffly. "I am busy, Joshua," I stammered, and for a moment, my voice was frozen, as if I am unable to speak anything. "Shalini, I don't have time. I thought I gave you money." His tone was impatient. "I am pregnant," I blurted out loudly. There was utterance on the other end, and for a moment, I thought Joshua had ended the connection. But I heard his raspy outtake of breath. "Pregnant? What? I thought I made it clear," he began. "Please, Joshua, please don't tell me to abort the baby," I pleaded. "The baby can bring us back to—" "Shalini, I don't want a family with you. I have already chosen someone to spend life with," he said gruffly. "Do what you want with the baby. I don't care." And the line went dead. I stared at the phone. "Do what you want with the baby. I don't care." Those words felt like sharp, icy words in my heart. Joshua Schoenberg is heartless and a complete different person from the one I used to love. And then I made a decision. I pick up my bag and set off to find Laura Myers. I am going to ask her to leave Joshua Schoenberg alone, because I will do anything to keep my baby and make Joshua responsible for the baby. After all, he is the father. Murder warning. This is quite long. On Google Docs, it was 8 pages and 1,617 words long. I hope you like it, though. Eleanor Gray knew who the suspect was. She was one of the best detectives in Europe and never got a case wrong. But this one was different. Different because it was harder than her previous ones. Harder because all the suspects she had chosen could be guilty or innocent. It could be Riley or Olivia, but she knew it definitely wasn't Emma. Emma was too sweet. But Eleanor had chosen Emma as one of her suspects because she was there for the entire murder. She heard the helpless screams. She saw the scarlet blood. She saw the silver knife gleaming under the moon, dripped in blood. And she didn't do anything the entire time. "Miss Gray." And for a while, Eleanor forgot she was at court. "Miss Gray, may I not need you to forget that you are at court at this moment. You may daydream all you like when you leave, but for the moment, you shall pay full attention to me and the conversation," Judge Chester explained. "I apologize, ma'am. I shall pay attention now," Eleanor said kindly. Judge Chester was very strict, but she was Miss Gray's favorite judge. She knew how to get the job done, and she never underestimated Eleanor, most likely because she was Judge Chester's once-removed cousin. "Now," the judge said, let's get back to work. Miss Gray, would you like to tell us who you think the suspect is? Or would you like your last 3 suspects to explain what they were doing? I would like my suspects to explain first, please. Suspect number 1. Olivia Bailey. Explain what you were doing at the time of the murder. Judge Chester shouted over the microphone. My name is Olivia Bailey. A red-headed girl stood up with mint green eyes and a brown tan. She was wearing a long yellow flower dress with a jean jacket over it. And I did not murder Miss Amelia Bailey because she is my sister. Anybody who tries to kill her sister is a maniac. And may I inform you kindly that I cared for my sister deeply. I may not have shown her much affection like most siblings do, but now that she is dead, I regret it. I should have shown her more love. I was offended at the fact that you chose me as a suspect. Miss Gray, explain why you have chosen Mrs. Bailey as a suspect. Eleanor started explaining. I have chosen Olivia Bailey as one of my suspects for many reasons. 1, she may be Miss Amelia's sister, but sometimes the suspect is the one that is the least thought of. When the Bailey sisters were growing up, they fought a lot, and most of the time, Amelia won. This murder may have been Olivia's revenge. 2, Mrs. Olivia has been absent often and found mostly at weapon shops. The knife used was a knife Olivia once bought. She may have bought it to kill her sister. At this, Olivia looked horrified. She looked as if she was about to scream and cry. But thankfully, she kept her mouth shut. So Eleanor went on. But the knife may as well have been found by the murderer when they broke in. 3, I was hoping not to say this, but it seems as though I have to. Mrs. Olivia has been found practicing murdering techniques on a dummy in one of her friend's basements. She has been practicing throwing and penetrating the heart from a small in the back. Miss Amelia's body was found with a puncture in that same spot. That is my evidence that Mrs. Olivia might be the murderer. Eleanor finished. She stared at Olivia, who was starting back at her. She looked as if she wanted to say something. And the great thing about Judge Chester was that she knew that look. Mrs. Olivia Bailey, would you like to add something? Yes, please, she said. I would like to say that the information Miss Gray has given is false. 1, yes, when we were children, we would fight, but we would play fight. Those times when I won was the times that my sister would let me, because we all knew that she was the better fighter in the family. I only fought her on occasion so that she could find new tricks. The judge looked quite fed up here. Mrs. Bailey, I understand where you are coming from, but we do not have the time for you to explain yourself. You may moan all you like, but for the time being, I have to trust the detective, Miss Gray. Now then, Miss Riley, explain what you were doing at the time of the murder. A tall girl with black hair and brown eyes stood up. She was wearing one of the shortest dresses Eleanor had ever seen. I didn't even know there was a murder until you told me before yesterday on the phone, she said, poised and calm. Too poised and calm, which wasn't natural for a suspect, unless they were the murderer, or she was just a calm person in general. But Eleanor and Riley had gone to the same school, and if Riley lacked something, it was calmness, patience, and calmness. It's not natural, Eleanor said, for somebody to be so calm when they are being interrogated. She was standing now and walking towards Riley, her blonde hair flowing in the air, her black hat covered over her hazel eyes, her jeans reaching her ankles where her black boots reached, her black leather jacket over a red shirt. One would think that a suspect would be fighting to stay out of prison, wouldn't they? A criminal would seem calm, to cover up their fear. Wouldn't you say so? Miss Gray asked, slamming her hands on Riley's desk, leaning over to stare into her eyes, to see the truth. I disagree, Miss Gray, Riley responded. An innocent person would not fight, because they would know that they do not need to serve time in prison. May I ask, Miss Riley, how many times you have been a detective trying to solve a crime? None. But if I must say so myself, I do watch a lot of court on television. And when we try to figure out who the criminal is, we are correct most of the time. And is court your favorite thing to watch? Yes. And at that, Miss Gray walked away and sat down, crossed legs on her desk, and hat tipped over her eyes, but keeping an eye on all three suspects. Now, Emma Williams, explain what you were doing at the time of the murder. I was working at my restaurant, ma'am, Emma said. She was the only one who wasn't wearing a dress. Instead, she wore a white top and gray leggings. Her brown hair covered her eyes, but Eleanor could still make out that they were the color of a storm at sea. A wild and free storm, but shy, just like Emma's character. And what exactly do you do at your restaurant? Miss Gray asked. I am a waitress. I take orders of food and drinks. I am quite familiar with what a waitress is, but what I do not understand is how you know Miss Amelia Bailey. From all the records we have seen, we have not heard anything that mentions Miss Bailey. So tell me, Miss Williams, how do you know Amelia? After a moment's hesitation, Emma said thoughtfully, our parents were close friends when they were younger. I grew alongside the Bailey sisters, but we kept it a secret. That is all the information we need from you, Emma, Eleanor said in a flat tone. After thinking thoughtfully, I have decided on who the criminal is. Judge Chester stared at Eleanor, though was not surprised. I have decided, Miss Gray went on, that the criminal is nobody. Everyone in the room was shocked. There were soft murmurs. Eleanor could only make out a few. What does she mean by nobody? Surely she has made a mistake. Silence, the judge shouted. Miss Gray, I do not understand. There has been proof of Miss Amelia Bailey's death. How is there nobody who killed her? Let me explain. Eleanor started. I am correct that only I saw the dead body, yes? Well, there was a puncture in her skin, in the same small of her back, as Miss Olivia was training. However, the sisters were only play fighting, like they did when they were little. They had agreed that they are allowed to use sharp weapons, and the reason Olivia was found training was for that match. Amelia was using their training room, and when the match started, Miss Amelia couldn't find her armor, so she thought she would be fine. Sadly, she died from blood loss. Yes, there was a puncture in her back, but it was very small. And somehow, overnight, she had died from blood loss. Miss Riley, you and Amelia were good friends when little, and you both loved watching court. I know from the information you gave me, you kept saying we instead of I or me. You meant Amelia as the other person, and Emma Williams. Or should I say Emma Bailey? Emma Amelia Bailey. Amelia had a twin sister, an unknown twin sister that Mr. and Mrs. Williams agreed on raising. I believe Amelia Bailey's full name is Amelia Emma Bailey. Yes, it is. So that concludes it. Nobody is guilty. Amelia Emma Bailey's death was unintentional. And she was finished. Another case closed. And she walked out of the hall to her apartment across the street. Countdown to death. I stared at the wall with half-lidded eyes and gulped. My breath was hoarse and croaky, my throat dry and absent of hydration. My hands trembled uncontrollably, scrambling for the cheap chalk, even though my eyes never once graced the sight of the white stick. My exhales were never rhythmic, constantly choking on the air as I mentally tried to inhale and exhale at the same time. I looked at every line drawn individually, memorizing what each meant to every detail of the messy scratch. There drawn were tallies, 42 singular ones, 8 full ones, with 2 to spare, to be exact. Each resembled each day I was kept here, in this hell. And they were slowly counting down to the inevitable release. I had 3 more weeks to fully understand my limited time here. My eyes suddenly widened as I let out a scream of terror. A scream that my fellow prisoners were very accustomed to. A scene of trauma washed over my eyes and sent my body crashing down onto the floor in pure fear. A sense of panic overwhelmed me, and my body began to sweat. All my movements henceforth were uncontrollable and predicted by the past. My emotions were painfully drowned by regretful memories that I begged to forget. I could only watch as my gravest mistake haunted me once again. "Paulette!" a gruff voice called, alerting me and distracting me from my duties. Paulette Ann Hadley. That's me. Short blue hair and matching piercing eyes. I'd dream about how they held the essence of the pure sky. But those thoughts were the only fantasies that I used to distract me from the life that I dreaded so much. Then again, I was very far from pure, even before the incident. "Paulette!" they shouted again, after only a few seconds of waiting. Impatient as always, incompetent as always, the voice belonged to my master, the Earl of Daventry, Sir Peter Holmes, a sorrowful old man who spent his seemingly endless days laying in his bed or sat in his office, scoffing his face with the fatty meals the chefs were forced to cook to fulfill his never-ending stomach. He ate his feelings. I'd feel sorry for him if he weren't such a bastard. "Paulette!" he screeched for the third time, all in the span of 20 seconds, so loud that I saw the family of mice that lived in the corner of the laundry room scurry across the dusty cobblestone floors in fright. I rolled my eyes in frustration and slapped the grungy old rag I used to clean the counter into the rusty steel sink. I tightened my apron and smoothed out the traditional maid's dress, all while cursing to myself in irritation. My uniform was nothing out of the ordinary for a low-classed maid like myself. Black and white, all the way through, of course. A short black dress with a white apron, white stockings, and black buckled shoes. I hurried up the grand staircase of the large Daventry estate, my feet thanking me for gifting them of a different surface to stand on that wasn't rough, uneven stone. Luscious carpet was certainly a lovely change from grubby concrete. Reaching my master's doors was something I was always dreaded because of what lay on the other side. I pressed a hand against the shiny wood, recently dusted and glossed by yours truly. The smooth touch of the spruce was nice against my sore and worn fingertips. "Master," I greeted with a sickly sweet tone, a forced smile painting my features. I could almost feel my left eye twitch in pent-up hatred. "Paulette!" he roared, his voice deep and gravelly. He was laid down on his satin sheets that held many empty plates and cups from the meals I had brought since this morning. They were already piling up. This sight was nothing new to me. This is what I spent my life's work on. This is what drove me insanity. A plate mounted with Victoria sponge cake rested on his rising and falling stomach. Oh, how I wanted to rip it open. "Yes, master?" I repeated, my voice bearing the same bittersweetness as every phrase that escaped my lips directed to my mortifying master. "I don't pay you to lounge around. I have been waiting for hours," he scolded, only to choke on a strawberry that had been layered between the sponge. Bits of red fruit spewed out into the air and dirtied the satin sheets with spit and berry. I cringed at the sight, but tried to contain the look because of the presence of my judgmental master. I enjoyed watching him struggle. "I was just finishing up the washing, master," I responded simply, never giving him the gift of eye contact. "I don't care what you were doing," he snapped with a snarl. "Clean up this mess. I am lying in filth. Hurry up, woman." He turned to his side, without giving a care about the plate that slid off his bloated stomach and smudged jam onto the expensive emerald. "Clean me up too," he ordered, with his own ugly, toothy cringe, showing off grimy yellow teeth. I rolled my shoulders backwards and relaxed my joints in a desperate attempt to contain my rage. I took 3 deep breaths through clenched teeth and slowly walked over to my master, my anger increasing with every step. I piled the empty plates into stacks and balanced them on my forearms to get the task done in one go and get away from my master as soon as possible. My muscles tensed under the weight of so much weight and sent my body to lean forward uncontrollably and my face to squish into the duvet. This would be a simple, clumsy topple to anyone but myself. Due to the superiority complex my master harbored, a deathly scream was sent sounding around the master bedroom. "Paulette, how dare you assault me like this?" He shrieked like a toddler as he pulled away from my body as if I were a parasite. I gulped, my body pulsing with overwhelming fury. My breaths became hollow and uneven, my lungs aching at the lack of oxygen I provided. Sorry, I stuttered, my voice dipping from a forced sweetness to a deep sarcasm. A sore cough followed my words, and a ripple crawled up my spine, like a wave of violent anxiety washing over me, without placing my eyes upon it. My fingertips grazed the blade of a knife covered in grease. My eyes widened, and all of a sudden, my movements were prioritized over my thoughts. My grip tightened on the kitchen knife, the sharp blade digging into my finger's flesh and drawing blood. The red liquid sunk into the satin and stained the fabric. But that was no problem, as lots more blood was soon to follow after. I let out a whimper as pain soared through my nerves, but I paid no matter. My only mind's focus was on the man who stared at me in confusion and growing anger. I couldn't care less about his emotions because they soon morphed into ones of pain and shock as I stabbed the tip of the knife into his belly. I pulled my hand off the blade and smeared my blood onto his naked stomach. I subconsciously let out a joyful yelp at the sight of his blood mixing with mine and creating an uncomfortable solution of growing red. I pressed my uninjured hand against the wooden handle of the knife and pushed the blade further into my master's stomach. I hastily pulled out the deadly weapon and plunged it back into his stomach. Blood splattered onto my dress, onto the bed, and onto my face. I repeated this sequence several times, the knife constantly going in and out of the body and splashing blood. With every cut, more blood seeped and deepened the stain on my usually perfectly clean apron. My face was now smeared in the metallic-smelling liquid and was dripping down my chin as if I were slurping soup, but missed my mouth. Master died after just a few stabs due to bleeding out and contagious infection. But that didn't stop my excitement. I sliced as much flesh as I could, covering as much surface area as I could, and slathering it with fresh, pungent blood. I made sure not to leave any area untouched with my bubbling rage. My lips twitched as a laugh escaped my throat, choking on itself and departing in the form of an evil cackle. I doubled down in laughter as pure ecstasy ran through my veins. I bounced on the expensive bed and headed towards the limp head of my master. I swiftly sliced the knife across my master's throat and admired the way sickly liquid swam down his wrinkled neck and ran down his chest like separating rivers. That blood quickly melded with that of his stomach and made a pool that looked like it had originated from the depths of hell itself. I twirled on the bed, never minding my steps that prodded into my master's corpse. The authorities arrived before I had taken my leave, and I was seized before I could flee. I was captured before I could even reminisce my actions. I was taken to Egan Prison and remained there till my death. 3 months to be exact. It was not a natural death, but a chosen one, confirmed by those who didn't even know me. I let out a gasp as the walls of my cell reappeared around me, and the touch of the cold concrete floor returned to my fingertips. My eyes widened as I took sight of the clean wall in front of me. They were gone. My tallies were gone. I let out a cough and a choke. "Help! Help!" I screamed, throwing myself at the wall and slamming a fist upon it in distress. "They're gone. They're gone. Who did this?" I demanded, punching the wall and watching blood draw my knuckles and splatter onto the gray. "Your day has come, Hadley. You're finally free." A voice mused, their tone echoing throughout my secluded cell. "What?" I gaped, blinking like a confused dog. "Free? Well, free from life, of course." They chuckled maliciously, taunting me with their freedom. I chose not to turn towards the guard that addressed me so rudely. My eyes continuously trained on the blank wall in front of me. I have a few more weeks. I can't I don't want to die, I cried out, tears brimming my eyes and blurring my vision. Should have thought about that before you killed a man. The guard glared, pulling open the door of my cell and approaching me with handcuffs. I pressed my back against the wall, but there was no escaping death. I was quickly seized and yanked down the hallway, past my fellow death row inmates. I hung my head low, hair shadowing my eyes and creating an eerie effect. My breaths were loud as anxiety built up inside of me. A panic attack approaching at a tremendous speed that I wished to slow down. I stumbled over my footing several times, each one getting more clumsy and emotional. By now, tears were streaming down my cheeks and creating thin lines of cleanliness that contrasted with the dirt and grime that littered my flesh. I did nothing to stop the loud sobs that slipped through my trembling and muttering lips, weeping as dread and hysteria flowed through every pore. We soon reached a standstill where I was forced into a chair. I stared into vicious brown eyes that reflected my own teary ones. They held no sympathy or remorse, just a simple hue of cheek. I inhaled and exhaled harshly, every breath increasing in volume, mass, and sound. Leather-worn straps were tightened over my wrists and ankles, and a rusty metal brace was placed firmly at my temples. Fear soared through my veins like rockets. I pulled and struggled against my restraints that were quickly cutting off my blood flow. I let out screams for mercy, but they went unheard. Let me go, please. It's not my time. I have weeks. I can't die, I wailed, shaking my head violently in a weak attempt to get rid of the brace that held me so firmly. A loud slap sounded throughout the dimly lit room. My head was thrown to the side, and a pulsing sting was sent flaring at my right cheek. My pleads and sobs ceased. Just a quiet whimper left in its place as a final emotion of sorrow took its toll. Shut it, woman, a guard hissed. Paulette Ann Hadley, you are sentenced to death via electrocution for the murder of Sir Peter Holmes on January 16th, 1898. Do you have any last words? Another guard recited, his tone bearing no sincerity whatsoever. I took a deep breath, lifting my gaze and meeting his to dramatize my following words. A scowl was painted at my lips, and furrowed eyebrows of anger took over my features. He deserved it. I growled with nothing but rage in my voice, a pull at the lever, and a crackle of wiring. Electricity was sent pulsing through my brain and sparked an agony that tore scream after scream from my dry throat. Quickly, my mind was sent spiraling into the endless dark abyss known as death. Muddled murder. The first thing I saw when I woke up was the blood. My mind went into a full panic mode, and I flipped out. I started checking all over myself to see where I had been injured, my bloody hands smearing the blood all over my clothes. Then I realized I wasn't injured, which could only mean one thing. It was someone else's blood, but whose? I had no idea. In fact, I had no idea where I was. All I could see around me was a dark, narrow street. I was standing on the sidewalk, quite far away from the nearest streetlight. Above me was the clear night sky. A handful of stars shone down upon me, and I felt that they were supposed to give me some comfort, but my heart rate refused to slow down. And then I saw it. There was a body on the curb, barely 10 meters away from me. My natural instinct was to go and check on the person, but something stopped me. I wondered what, but my memory refused to provide me with anything in my past. I tiptoed closer. Not another soul in the alley as I went and checked. I was still a couple of meters away from the man when I realized he wasn't breathing. There was a pool of blood spreading from his torso and onto the sidewalk. The man was dead, and I had blood on my hands. I didn't need any memory to add up the two. A car's headlights suddenly flashed to life in front of me, and the engine revved on. It reversed a bit, and then sped past me, barely giving me enough time to register the man sitting inside. From the small pharmacy in front of me, a short, bearded man came out and started pulling down the shutter. I did the first thing that came to my mind. I ran. I had no idea how long I had run for, but I am sure it was a pretty long time because my t-shirt was completely soaked in sweat by the time I stopped, and it was an early winter evening. I realized I was on a bridge, a few cars going by, couples walking holding hands, families with little children. I wondered who my parents were, if I was married or had a romantic lover. If I only had my memories back, my life. But the sight of my hand snapped me right out of those thoughts. It didn't matter, because nobody would want to be related to a murderer. I didn't know if someone else had killed him, or if it had been me. But suddenly, it occurred to me that it would be better if I didn't know. If I did remember my past, what if I realized that I had murdered him? Not only him, but maybe others too. Just that thought made me doubt myself, and wanting my memories back seemed like a dangerous option. I descended the bridge to reach the turbid river flowing past me, and thankfully washed up my bright red hands in the water. My hands were numb by the time I stood up to return to the upper roads. That was when I heard something. "Oh, it was easy as cake," a man said. "Are you sure no one was there?" asked a woman. "I think I saw a girl, and she saw me." I panicked and drove forward, but the car hit her head, and she collapsed to the ground. I didn't know what to do, and I stopped to check, but she was stirring up, so I raced away," the man replied. It was coming from the other side of the bridge, beyond the wall separating the riverbank for the construction of the bridge. I tiptoed over to it and peeked out to see who was talking. Smoke blew out from a man's dark lips as he put a cigarette into his mouth again. Leaning on the wall, the woman was standing across from him, arms crossed, in oversized, baggy clothes. She had a beanie on her head and wore huge, funky glasses. She was facing me, but I was well hidden in the dark. They continued talking, not caring to keep their voices down. "You dolt? The body is still there?" the woman asked. "Abandoned on the sidewalk. Shouldn't be noticed by anyone till tomorrow morning. By then, we'll be long gone." The man was nonchalant. The woman nodded, a bit anxious, while he smoked for a minute more. Then they both started climbing up the riverbank. I followed them after some time, composing my thoughts and struggling to remember something. I thought I must have waited for a minute or two, but I somehow still saw the car leaving with the two people in it, and the slate of my memory, which had been wiped clean, managed to store the number in it. Police sirens made their way to my ears, and I was a bit surprised my blank mind recognized it. Had I heard them many times before? Was I actually a criminal? What was my past? I somehow didn't want to find out. I just stood frozen there, above the riverbank, in the headlights of the police cars as they advanced towards me. I was literally unable to move, dead tired and fatigued. "Hands up in the air," came a voice over the loudspeaker. My addled mind did as I was told. The next few minutes were a blur as the cops came out, handcuffed me, charged me for the murder of a famous entrepreneur, and took me to the police station for questioning. Somewhere along the way, I fell unconscious. "Did you kill Mr. Pop?" I knew that was the name the entrepreneur was known by, but it sounded funny. I bit back a chuckle. "I don't know," I answered, just like I had the 3 last times. "I have all night," the officer told me. "Keep sitting then. I hope your butt doesn't hurt." I almost smirked. He glared daggers at me, and then stood up and left the room. A few minutes later, another officer entered, a plump, middle-aged woman. "Answer honestly. Did you kill Mr. Pop?" "I have been telling you honestly. I have no idea whether I did or I didn't. I just woke up with no memory of where I was or who I was," I yelled at her. Yelled. She nodded in sympathy. Quite common in criminals. I was too tired to correct her, but I was exasperated. Why couldn't they just understand I was telling the truth? Nothing in my head tells me that I killed that man, so I don't know, I declared. "There is quite some evidence, you know. The blood on your clothes matches with his." I looked down at the red spots and smears on my clothes and winced. And a shop owner in the alley says that he saw a girl with a description like yours, run away from the dead body. Same orange t-shirt, same long braid, and same camo pants. Now tell me, what am I supposed to believe?" She raised an eyebrow. "I really don't know," I said. The description was me all right, and I had run away. But had I killed the man? Unsure guilt surged through my veins, and the officer noticed the beads of sweat on my forehead. If I was the murderer, I was just making their jobs harder. But then, I didn't want to find out. Unsure guilt was stressful enough, and I didn't know how I could live with the knowledge that I had killed a human being in cold blood. "Are you sure you don't want to confess anything?" she asked with a tone of finality in her sweet voice. "I would confess if I remembered anything," I replied. Then I suddenly remembered something. "Wait, what's wrong?" The lady officer leaned forward, eyebrows knitted together. "I saw that car leave the bridge tonight. The two people in it, they were talking about something suspicious," I said, racking my brain for the words. The man raised an eyebrow. "What? I'm not sure." "They were saying that they left a body on the sidewalk. A girl had seen it. They hit her head and run away. They were planning to escape tonight." I narrated the incident. "How does that make a difference?" "It does," I said, as I saw my spark of hope being snatched away with it. "You should check. I remember the car number. You know the number plate, huh?" The two police officers had tracked the number plate to a road by the river, where a car had been abandoned. "Go home," the woman told me. "I don't know where I live." "Then wait here. We're going alone." I scowled as I followed them out of the police station, and their car revved away. Then I saw a cab passing me and jumped in. "Follow that car!" We followed the car for 25 minutes until we reached a road running parallel to the river. The police car had stopped behind the car I had seen before, and I told the cab driver to park behind it and jumped off. I rushed to the shore, where I could see the river and a small boathouse in the distance. The river was wide at that point, the current slow. To my left were the mountains into which the river bent, and my right were the police officers near the boathouse about half a kilometer away. I saw the man and woman I had seen earlier, along with a dark guy in shoes, pull out a rusty old motorboat and push it into the water and jump on. "Put your hands in the air. You cannot escape tonight." The officers pointed their gun at them. In their surprise, someone suddenly activated the turbines, and they sped ahead into the river, moving towards my side. The motorboat was slow. The turbines were sputtering and malfunctioning as the boat raced away, forearm the routing and chasing officers. I don't know what I was thinking, but I barely hesitated a second before jumping into the river to my left. They were speeding towards my side, cutting through the middle of the river. I was perpendicularly closer, and I knew I could reach the center before they did. I swam in smooth, rapid strokes, cutting through the water like a literal fish as I aimed towards the center where they would reach in about 10 seconds. I think they were too preoccupied keeping their eyes on the officers because they certainly didn't see me coming. The cold water didn't faze me. It was like it was part of my blood. Of course, the adrenaline counteracted it, and I had no trouble speeding through the limpid surface. As expected, I reached 1 second before their boat. As it zoomed past me, I somehow managed to grab hold of the end. I clambered on, somehow still unnoticed by the 3 people, while the officers stared at me, flabbergasted. They were too scared to shoot, let it hurt me, so it all depended on me. I crept forward and elbowed the cigarette man in the neck sharply, that he fell to the ground immediately, somehow unconscious. The woman turned to me, ready to battle in her large hanging clothes. I ducked to avoid her punch, grabbed her arm, and twisted it behind her back. Then I kicked her off the boat as it continued speeding away. The last man was the one with the shades, driving the boat. He stepped out of the seat while the boat continued towards the hills and turned to face me. Even though I couldn't see his eyes, a chill ran down my spine, and he attacked. I think my brain was a little slow to process as his kick swept me off my feet and knocked the air out of my lungs. Panting, I pushed at the floor to get up, while he grabbed my hair and pushed my head towards the whirring motors of the boat. He pressurized me into the blades, while I used all my physical strength to hold my head up. He pushed once, twice, and the 3rd time, I finally got a grip with one hand to ram the other into his sternum. As he doubled back, I realized that the boat was heading straight for a wall of soil and bushes. A hill was straight ahead. I rushed towards the wheel, but before I could rush it, the man got up and tugged me back. I wrestled with him, watching the imminent crash drifting closer. He kicked my thigh, and I launched a punch at his shoulder, ran again for the wheel. Grabbing the cool metal, I yanked it to the right, just as the boat curved around the edge of the hill, and barely avoided the collision. The man with shades had managed to stand up at the end of the boat, but my sudden turn threw him off balance, and he splashed into the water. I steered the boat towards the shore as I saw the other 2 criminals climbing out and being ambushed by the police officers. I finally parked along the bank and stepped out, my mind in a whirl, even more muddled than before. The 2 officers emerged, dragging along the 2 criminals. The woman went on to the boat and brought the 3rd guy, then came back, and both of them patted my back. But I wasn't paying attention. My mind was elsewhere. How did I know how to do all that? How did I swim so well, or fight so brutally? The worst thought crept into my head. I could be a trained assassin or mercenary. I was too much of an expert, and I had been pretty close to the dead man. I was scared that I had led the police on a wild goose chase. I must be the real criminal. I must have killed Mr. Pop. I didn't want to find out. When I voiced my concerns, the police officers waved them away, too busy congratulating me. But my head refused to believe them, fearful of what my past could hold. Hey, do you remember me? A man rushed into the hospital ward, worry lines creasing over his forehead. Two people who claimed to be my parents were standing on one side of my bed, explaining to me that he was my brother. I'm sorry, but no, I said, and he looked like he was about to burst into tears. My parents leaned over and hugged him, as they also squeezed my hands. I saw the two police officers appear from the door. They had huge grins on their faces. All three of them confessed to the murder, and we also found them guilty of a couple more. They have been duly imprisoned. Great work, kid, the man said. And on top of that, it was announced a couple of hours ago that you are going to be awarded a bravery medal for your courage. The woman was about to jump up and down. I found it difficult to smile. But how was I able to defeat them so easily? How could I fight so well, swim so smoothly? Are you sure I'm not a danger to society? My brow was furrowed. No, not at all. The man who was supposed to be my father guffawed and slapped my thigh. Don't worry. I'll tell you a bit about yourself. You are 26, won 7 medals for swimming in high school, and now teach martial arts at a renowned academy. Off with their heads. Yes, Mother. I sigh into the line, wrapping the infamous cord around my finger. Of course, I'm fine. What? No, it's not like I'm in the States. This is Britain, God damn it. Mother, no, I think you should lie down for a while. Call Dad as well. He'd fancy a visit from you, I'm sure. And just like that, my hand smashes back on the receiver. Blood, Britain, eh? Who could ever have imagined Olivia, from the apartment up above, would pursue law in England? Well, for starters, certainly not her. A buggy sweeps by my rusted telephone box as I take a single drag on the cigarette laid before me in its little red tin box. Rainwater nearly splashes up on my impeccable outfit, the poor thing. I shake my fist at the driver, but there's no use. The lad's already way off into the distance. What would the world be without Britain? Perhaps every world has some sort of Britain as well. Little men in their fancy outfits, always circling each other with arguments. At least they're nothing like that bloody American man. What was his name again? Nixon, was it? Yes. Terrible, terrible people doing amazing things. I've always found it fascinating you know? My red kitten heels splash against more rainwater. I curse myself silently for not bringing that little red umbrella with me. Perhaps I could pick it up on my way to the office. Their stares don't avoid me as I run by. I can catch those disgusting men from the corner of my eye, all staring. It's not as if I'm putting on a show, is it? Still, I can only imagine what they see. A French woman, plush red lips against fair skin. I even tried to wear my longer crimson dress today. Turns out, that effort proved fruitless. I jump into the office, gasping as the heat blasts me behind the wooden panels. In the background, I can hear softer jazz clashing with news reports from the telly, as if warring between each other. What is it this time? I ask Bonnie, the sharp woman sitting at the desk, or as she urges me to call her, Bonbon. Ridiculous name. Her bleached curls pull up nicely against her dark skin and bright yellow dress. She swears it's from that damn swinging Britain stage we're going through right now. She shrugs, leaning over to stare at the Pixel E screen. Those Beetle kids are going to broke up, she snaps back, leaning into the plush sides of her chair. The corners of her mouth edge up slightly as she stares at the messily done bun in my hair. How do you get your hair like that? Oh, I grin back, picking up the large manila folder before her. Do shut up. What's our next case? It's hard to say. Bonbon plucks a pen from her container, absent-mindedly scribbling on her schedule paper. They ordered us to take up all the spots for the month. All of them? My eyebrows shoot up as I feel my face grow red with anger. The audacity. Who do they think they are to order us around? There are nearly 1 million clients in London, all looking for lawyers. And yet this Flash bastard thinks he's important enough to take all her attention. This is the case. She heaves more mundane folders toward me, all packed to the brim with paper. I know. It's a lot. You might even need to help us with this one, I tease. Not my style. Bonnie slumps back. Olivia, some of us girls aren't meant to be smart. We're just supposed to smile and look pretty. Some of us don't get enough funds to go to Oxford either, or travel back and forth from France. I ignore the dig. It's odd how Bonnie and I see ourselves as adults, despite both of us only just being able to drink. Right when I graduated from Oxford, I got accepted into this law firm, the best one in London. Sometimes I wonder if I'd even stay here without the job. Britain is just so dreary. It's quite depressing, especially at first glance. Maybe that's all it deserves. My heels clack down the hallway as I desert the drab lobby. When I finally reach my own personalized office, I feel as if I'm at home. I strut to the opalescent gramophone occupying the corner, placing a thin record upon it. Half my collection is sonata, while the other is all that new style of rock. I believe those critics have begun to call it punk? Whatever the case, it's the only connection I have to my generation. I often find myself discarded in this new, modern era. People believe there is to be so much more, but I can't possibly imagine what could come next. I sit at my small desk, shuffling through the papers that have been so graciously presented to me without haste. How does one look through these documents with such excitement, anyhow? I prefer the thrill of the courtroom to the dual sensation of passing through files and archives. Nevertheless, one needs to begin a task for them to finish it. After nearly 2 hours of reading, Bonnie returns to my office with a cup of tea and the person I'd least like to see right now. Darcy places a hand onto my desk, snatching the tea from Bonnie's hand. "I thought you'd like some tea," she whispers in an accusatory manner. "I see," I groan. "So much so that you grabbed it straight from Bonnie's hand." Darcy snaps her long white fingers. "Leave, pest. Make yourself useful and sort through the files." I all read. Our boss pulls her emerald-colored nails through her platinum blonde hair. Who's to say I didn't mess them up while you were wasting time? Bonnie's gum snaps as she pulls it back in from its bubble. "Course, miss," as her thin legs carry her off down the drab walls. Darcy smashes her fists on my desk before traveling to the gramophone, looking down with distaste. "I find all parts of your music taste disgusting." "Thanks," I mumble, returning to my work. "Now that you've given me some tea and made fun of my music, you can leave. I simply can't figure out how you work with this rock in the background." "First of all," I sigh, throwing down some more papers to the floor. Darcy's eyes widen, but I only shrug. "There's a method to my madness. They taught me some amazing things in your British college, you know?" "Ah, yes," she laments. "The French girl decides to bless us with her knowledge. You know," Darcy dumps more papers onto the floor. "In London, we don't do things with madness. We are intelligent, young women in a time of enlightenment. By the way, I didn't notice you at the Women's March last week. Were you busy?" "Darcy," I reply hastily. "You know I'm all for women's rights. Of course, there are things that I'd rather be doing than marching for them." "What?" she squawks, almost knocking over a clock now leaning dangerously toward the ground. She attempts to upright it, only to leave it tilted on its side. I suppose it's for the best. It's not like I often leave this small office. But then, if we march for it, people ridicule us. I'd rather work on letters to Parliament. And pray tell, where are these letters? I feel my face grow red as I bolt up. There better be a point to this meeting. Darcy backs away from my outburst, sighing. "I wanted to ask you what you thought of the case. Dr. Sherman came into his house late at night." I recall the words from the page now lying on the checkerboard carpet. His daughter was still at the secondary school's dance recital, one she only feigned interest in. Darcy raises an eyebrow. I didn't remember anything like that in the case. I only assumed apologies. I'm sorry. Alice just brought a lot of attention to herself. Anyway, where were we? The very beginning, I believe. Precisely. I pretend not to notice the acid in her voice. Dr. Sherman swears that he was missing a certain object from his house. However, the object seems to be missing from the case. That's what I wanted to show you. Darcy nods. She flicks a paper toward my desk, containing only a black and white picture. I squint between the grainy pixels, making out an image. He's really suing for a hat? That hat costs over $100,000. Darcy discloses, snatching the photo back into her brown briefcase. But then, why is he suing for $1 million? I ask, still incredulous. He believes Blake Connery stole the hate. She adjusts her glasses before turning her back on me. Didn't you read the report? Of course I did. She sniffs at the outburst. Mr. Connery went to Sherman's house to go over their last meeting. Something about therapy, I believe. Perhaps this case could help you? Darcy points a pen towards me. You could use some anger management, and with that, the dastardly woman exits stage left, a smug smile still plastered on her face. Is it possible to hit a glass ceiling when your boss is a woman? Still, it's hard for me to believe it. And so you see, the red-faced man before me spits. That's why the hammer of justice must be brought down. My house was ravaged by this madman. I wouldn't dare say it for any of my other patients, but Blake Connery is a psychopath. Well, I can sense his anger rising even higher than mine as I look over the report. When you gave us access to your notes, it didn't seem as if Mr. Connery had any sort of mental illnesses besides his bipolar disorder. Exactly. He stands up, almost sloshing tea on my immaculate red dress. When Darcy had permitted me to interview Dr. Sherman, I'd expected someone much less unhinged. Why is it that the mad are always the most composed? He put on a farce. Dr. Sherman sits back down, crossing his hands. It's almost obvious that he's trying to pull some therapeutic shit on me. Of course, it'd take a lot more than that to faze me. Either Sherman's a bad therapist, or he truly is under a lot of stress from losing his hat. He made me believe that he's not a bloody thief. Let's not jump to accusations about the defendant. I place the papers back into their files to stop him from seeing the work I've already done. It wouldn't do for my client to already know I believe he's insane. Oh? A mousy blonde jumps into the scene, perhaps around 16. Nearly the age I was when I first came to this despicable city. Ignore Papa's ravings. He's just angry still, and rightfully so. For a moment, I'm afraid that he'll slap the girl I've already assumed to be Alice. But he laughs it off. Perhaps she has a therapeutic herself. Despite that fact, something bubbles inside of me as I stare at her in the slightly blue dress. It's my most prized possession. I can make you another, Papa. Alice leans down to hug her father's neck. He smiles, then turns back to me, the joy already wiped off his face. What can I say? I have that effect on some people. I'm sure you can, my butterfly, but we must bring down justice. And with that, I'm immediately done. I've gathered almost useless information, and then it daunts on me. This is what it's going to be like for a straight month, maybe more. This is what I despise about this city. Everything is either gloomy or wonderful. The people, the jobs, the world. But one thing stays the same. In fact, that's the charm of it. Everything is stagnant, orbiting around the world. We all get a chance to be in the spotlight. And sometimes, that's the worst part. I think I have enough information for today, I sigh, placing my tea down with a slow clink. Is it enough to incarcerate the bastard? You're suing him, I remind Dr. Sherman. He's not going to jail? Ha! When I'm done with him, I'm sure that won't be the case. I hired the entirety of the best law firm in the city to work on my case. I can't lose. I'm done arguing with him. On any other day, I'd gladly debate with him until he realizes how much of a damn fool he is. But today, it's almost impossible. The streets are nearly deserted for a crisp May day. I can hear the roars of a crowd in the distance, but there's no one on this street. I check my watch, disappointing myself almost immediately. It's still technically my lunch break, and I haven't found anything useful yet. I'd usually be good and done by now. Instead, I'm stuck in this rabbit hole of a case. No evidence, and I'm surrounded by lunatics. Just my luck, naturally. Eventually, I'm face to face with the source of the crowd's cheering. A band plays upon a large wooden stage, surrounded by small bulbs holding dead string lights. It doesn't take long to find a familiar face. Bonnie? She twists around, staring at me in fear. Her voice comes out way too fast, almost like Dr. Sherman's. Okay, look, don't tell Darcy. I just heard they were playing today, and I'm not telling Darcy, I urge. Anyway, they're pretty good. Better than anyone else on the radio, at least. What's their name? The Hatters. Bonnie shrugs. I know. It's weird. No? I shake my head. More like a coincidence. Ugh. She hangs her tan arms around my neck, jumping to the dark, sporadic beat. Are you still on that case? Well, Bonnie. My voice drifts off before I can dish out a biting comment. Wait. How do you know about the case? She blushes deep red. I might have read it. You did? I laugh incredulously. fixing it immediately after. No, I'm just surprised. That's great. I could use some help. But what made you decide it? Well, Bonnie shrugs. I just wanted to help out, I guess. I'm always just the girl behind the desk, the one with a smile. I saw how you stood up to Darcy, and her thoughts are interrupted by perhaps the cutest man eclipsing the world. A guitar held in his dark hands. His curls are covered in a thin sheen of sweat as he smiles toward us. It takes me a moment and a jab from Bonnie to realize it's me he's smiling at. Hey, he flashes us a gleaming grin, tipping a tall top hat, clashing directly with his leather and chains. Name's Blake, and just like that, the conversation is ruined. No? The smile fades a little as the band on stage drifts off. I guess he's their central power source. I can't understand. I blush profusely. No, it's not you. I just mean, you're Blake Connery, I assume. Bonnie's eyes flash with fear at the notion. I mean, I know it's random. It's mad, but it's so me. Was it fate that brought us together? He brushes past Bonnie, but for once, I don't see her angry that a man is ignoring her. I can see the emotions warring in her mind. On one side, we know that I'm going to have to possibly rob him of all his money. On the other hand, he's hot. You know my name. Well, I pull out the manila folder, reaching for the picture displaying him I grabbed from Dr. Sherman's office. I also have your file. He doesn't display the reaction I expected. He leans back, staring down at his watch. You're working for Sherman, huh? That seems to be the case. So, Bonbon leans back, grabbing her bright yellow purse. I should probably. She leaves her bleach blonde curls bouncing in the wind. Can I just tell you? I try to imitate his smile, only to completely cringe. That man is clearly insane. That gives him a laugh. It's his daughter, Alice. Now I have to stifle my chuckle. But she's innocent. That's just what she wants you to believe. Say, how about you stick with me, and you win this case for me? I have heaps of knowledge for you. And I suppose you know this because you're an expert lawyer? Dr. Sherman holds all his meetings in his house, Blake recites. I was there lawfully, and I never stole his hat. But we don't have the security cameras. I beg your pardon, Sherman has cameras. And even if he won't give you access, I will. And you lawfully took these? Ya got me there. Blake stares sheepishly down toward the folder. I have connections. And that isn't shady at all. If you've been having a bad time in this city, it's because you haven't been living like me. I know it all. That doesn't answer my question, genius. Look, Connery stares back at the clock again. Are you on a break? I have about an hour or two before I need to return to the office. Sherman cut the meeting short. Have lunch with me. I promise that by the end of it, You'll be swayed to my side. And what does that mean? He produces a wallet, holding up a wad of cash. Whatever Sherman paid you will look like a joke compared to what I can give you. I'll even give you more than just money. Okay. I blush. Let's just lead the way, gladly. Miss Olivia. Blake flashes me another dangerous smile. I believe this will be the beginning of a great union.